Welcome to FoundHer Rising, the podcast for women founders in wellness coaching and consulting who are ready to build businesses that create freedom, impact, and income. I'm your host, Christine Hakkola, business coach, former psychotherapist, and mentor to women scaling service-based businesses. Today, I'm joined by Maddy Niebauer, founder of vChief, based in Madison, Wisconsin. She provides part-time chiefs of staff to leaders to help them use their time more effectively. Maddy, welcome to the show.
Hi, Christine. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you. And I will say right out of the gate that our listeners are in for a very big treat today because you've built a really, really successful business. We're going to get into that in a minute. But I want to start at the beginning. You shared with me earlier that you started this business as like a side gig. Tell us a little bit about where you were at the time and how you got started.
Yeah, well, I was in a chief of staff role at Teach for America, which is a large nonprofit. And the woman who I supported as her chief of staff left to start a new nonprofit, and I moved into a different role at TFA. And then she came back after a handful of months and was just like, I can't live without you. Will you work for me on the side, 5 or 10 hours a week? And I was excited to do that. And I did that for a number of months and then decided I want to transition out of Teach for America and thought, well, maybe I'll do what I'm doing for her for a handful of other clients. So that was the genesis, was I'll just be an independent contractor and grab a few clients. And then it really grew from there.
So what was the moment that this stopped being something on the side and you realized it could be a lot bigger?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I was transitioning out of my role and I was actually with my family in Costa Rica at the time. We used to do these trips over the winter to sort of escape Wisconsin. And I was reading the book, The 4-Hour Work Week, and really thinking a lot about, what does this future look like? Mm-hmm. And so, I started the business not just sort of focused on me. I thought maybe I would have clients and then maybe other people would have clients. Mm-hmm. And pretty quickly, I realized that there was demand for, significantly more than me having 3 or 4 clients. And so, and I think with like that mindset that book gave me, just to stop only trading my time for money, that was when I decided to grow a real business and stop just doing the client services myself. And so I continued to support my former boss for a year, the first year that my business was going, but every other client who came in, then I became a matchmaker and I found other talent to work with those leaders. Yeah. And that I think was one of the most important decisions that led to the growth of where we've gotten to today.
Yeah. So there's a number of reasons that you just touched on that I'm excited to speak with you today. One is that you've built a business that is similar to what many of our listeners, what many female founders aspire to build. Yet you started in these early days, like being a service provider yourself. I want to actually have you explain a little bit about like, what did you do? I want to understand, what your business is. So in those early days, when you were the one providing the service, what service were you providing to folks?
Yeah, so I was a part-time chief of staff, and a lot of people don't know what a chief of staff is.
Yes, so tell us, what is it?
So let me explain what the heck that means. For her, in that context, I did a lot of helping her think strategically about how she spent her time. So she had an assistant who managed all of the logistics of that, but I helped her set strategic priorities each quarter. And we would say, these are the things that you really need to win at. What are the ways that you're moving those things forward? And then I would support her to really focus on those areas. And the support that I gave her varied a lot, but it was mainly taking things off her plate so that she could focus on those things. So I did things like supporting her with her direct reports, planning team retreats. When she would travel, I would work with her assistant to think about like, who are the important people in New York that she needs to meet? And we would like prepare everything for those meetings. And I would also hold a lot of bigger strategic projects that didn't have any other natural home in the organization.
Yes.
And so it was honestly, each chief of staff job often is a hodgepodge of different things, but it's a lot of project management. It's a lot of directly supporting an executive. It might be writing their speeches or building their PowerPoints. And a lot of times it's bringing the team together in different ways or holding big projects.
Yeah, in the world that I come from, and I want to elaborate on this so our listeners really understand, because in my world, having these types of roles are very important to women growing small and mid-sized service businesses. So in the world where I come from, I often conceptualize these people as like fractional COOs or directors of operations, people, as you said, that manage the teams, manage the systems. It's like a right-hand person, or like the left side of your brain for the visionary.
Yeah. It's that person who's like, you're like, oh, I don't have time or energy or bandwidth to deal with this thing. Like, let me give it to someone. What a gift it is to have someone that will just take that off your plate so that you can really focus where
I need one of those. So you did something that not a lot of service providers do early on. You recognized early on, before you got saturated with one-on-one clients of your own, of, the demand here is and can be much bigger than what I alone can service. And very early on, you pivoted and you brought on other people to do the service delivery. Talk to us about how you did that, especially like keeping in mind that a lot of the listeners here, like, that's a foreign concept. Like, how on earth do I bring someone into my business to do what I do? How did you do that?
Yeah. Well, I think it's hard, right? Because a lot of times in the early days, people are coming to you because they know your reputation. And so they want to work with you. Yes. And I think there's a number of different ways you can do this. I personally was just like, no, I'm not going to take any more clients. And when people would come to me, I would say, I know that you want to work with me. I will help set up the project. I will be the one to find out exactly what you need, and I will find you your perfect person. And I got really good at matchmaking and understanding
you're a good salesperson too,
and the talent of the people in our network, in our pool of talent.
Yeah.
And being a great matchmaker. And that felt like it became my like special skill that clients would come to us for. So initially they were like, I want you to be my chief of staff because I've heard great things from this person about you. And then, I had to do the convincing of, here are other people who could do the job just as well as me, and finding things that were great about them that might not have been true about me. Right. Yeah. I think there are other ways to do it, right? Like you can start by subcontracting out pieces of it. Maybe there's a project that has a lot of admin and you're like, okay, I'm going to hire someone just to do the admin pieces of this, but it's all going to flow through me. Yeah. That can be a starting point. But I think also part of it is just a mindset shift. And a putting stake in the ground. And a lot of times leaders will respect you if you're like, you know what, I don't actually do client-facing work anymore. Here's how we do it. I like, you can trust in our brand. And it's really about like building something that is bigger than yourself, that represents more than just the talents that you bring to the table. My executive coach in the early days, when vChief was only me, was like, you will always talk about vChief as we, whether or not it's just you or someone else. And that I think is one way to sort of mentally get into the space of like, no, I'm building something that's bigger than me.
Yeah. I love how clearly and simply you just laid all that out. Like when the recording is released, I'm going to go back and re-listen to that part because it was so well said, Maddy. So many women founders that I speak to get really, really stuck there is even when they start to think or even start to talk about not being the primary service provider. That's one of the first challenges or obstacles that they come up against is the pushback from their clients, right? Is of course people want to work with them. Of course folks are going to say, but I only want to work with you. But when we just give into that, right? When that suddenly becomes a barrier that we don't know how to overcome, that's when we stay stuck. And it sounds like for you, what you did is you just like took that service provider hat off and you put the matchmaker hat on and you decided, like you said, it's a huge mindset shift of I'm not going to do that anymore. But what I am going to do is this. That ultimately proved arguably better for your clients, definitely better for you and your business. Yeah. Talk about what happened after that. Like what were some of the milestones that you hit and what did your business look like as you started to hire people to deliver the services?
Yeah. So what's interesting, it was in the very, very beginning of the business that I hired other people to provide services to clients. Yeah. And that in the beginning felt like a runaround every time because we did not have a pool of talent yet. So it would be like, I get a client who has a specific need. I run around to my network and try to find people to meet that need. And it was really overwhelming at times, actually. But in the end, because I would try to go find people for each of these things, we kind of built up a stable of people who we knew could be good. They might not be perfect for this project, but they might be good for this other one. And so we unintentionally, I think, at first started building a pool of talent. And then over time became more intentional about that. And so even though I wasn't doing client facing work other than with my original former boss, I was doing all of the behind the scenes work to make the business run, right? So I was interviewing every candidate. I was talking to every potential client. I was figuring out social media and a website and accounting and everything, right? And so then the problem became not just how do I stay out of client services? It became like, there are a million things to do to run this business. I am good at a number of them. I am not an expert at some of them, right? And so what are the pieces of the central running of the business do I need to let go? And how do I do that when we're not making any money yet, right? Or we're making minimal money. And I'm trying to like recoup what I was making in my old salary, but also build this business. And I think that is one of the stickiest spots of growing a business, because you are doing things with limited resources, but also like don't want to burn yourself out at every angle. And so I think one of the things that I did early on was figure out like, what do I not want to do? What am I not good at? And how do I give that away to other people? Right. So I looked at QuickBooks the first month of business and I was like, I don't want to learn this. Like, I want to do business school. I've built like complicated financial models for multi-million-dollar organizations. I do not want to learn QuickBooks. I just don't.
Yeah, you just knew what wasn't in your skill set.
I'm like,
that was not a good use.
Neither in my wheelhouse nor in like, does it make sense for me to own? And so I got an accountant right away. It was someone from my co-working space, and she ended up being my accountant for 5 years. She's amazing. Wow. And now she works for us as one of our people who work with clients, which is amazing also. But, I think identifying those things that you need to take off your plate is super important. So that was one of them. Digital media was another one where I was like, I don't know anything about SEO. Like, I made our first website. Like, you can figure stuff out. You can bootstrap and be scrappy. But if I want it to pop up on the search engines, or I want to figure out like, how am I using advertisements on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or wherever, like, what should I be doing? And it was also sort of through networking that I found the guy who was our first social media guy. And I was like, I don't want to be spammy. I don't want to send a newsletter. He's like, Maddy, that's not an option. We're sending a newsletter. And like, thank God for people who are like, I'm just going to check you here. This is my area of expertise, and you're going to listen to me.
Because our own fears and misconceptions can get in the way so many times. And especially when we're not an expert, we're not the best person to be doing that part of our business.
Amen. So like, there was a handful of things that like either I didn't know, or things that were like taking up all my time that I knew just like I couldn't maintain. So like interviewing candidates, that was something that just took over all my time. So that was another person. So all these people I hired, but I hired as contractors. So they would just come in and work a handful of hours a week or a month and run those pieces for me so that it could stop taking up my brain space, you know?
It's like on the one hand, like you were pretty scrappy, but then also really strategic about who you hired and what you outsourced.
Yes. And like within our limits, right? Because I'm not going to go hiring full-time people in the beginning. I don't have any money to do that, right?
Exactly.
And so, part of me looks back and thinks, wow, that was lucky that I figured out a lot of that stuff. And it doesn't sound like that was a really smart strategic decision, right? Yeah. Like, it takes some chutzpah of just, like, put it all out there and say, like, this is going to be risky. I would make much more money if I were just taking all the clients right now, right? But I also wouldn't have any time or energy to think about growing the business. And that, I think, is the trade-off. And at some point, you just have to decide, like, fuck it, I'm going to take the risk,
Yeah, I love this. Before we keep going, I want to say something. If you're listening to this and thinking, oh, I'm in that season right now, I'd love to talk to you. FoundHer Rising isn't about polished success stories. It's about real growth, the hiring decisions, the revenue plateaus, the identity shifts that happen when your business starts stretching you. If you're building something meaningful in wellness, coaching, or consulting, and you're willing to have an honest conversation about what scaling actually looks like, apply to be a guest. The link's in the show notes. I'd love to meet you. Okay, back to the episode. So many of the guests that we have on the show, we don't talk a lot about revenue and gross income and all that sort of stuff, but many of the guests that we have on the show are earning 150,000 to 200,000 all the way up to $1 million, and the clients that I serve and our guests are earning in, six figures, from low to high six figures, sometimes just past $1 million. You've grown your business to $10 million. You are that rare woman of a unicorn who has broken past that ceiling and gotten to 8 figures. And to a lot of listeners listening, that just seems impossible. It seems crazy.
Can I be honest? It would have seemed crazy to me when I started too. I remember when we hit 1 million in a year, and I was like, this is ridiculous. It's beyond my wildest dreams. And then we hit 1 million in a month, and I was like, stop it. What is that?
I'm so glad to hear that your experience of it and reaction is probably similar to how any of ours would be, that it just seems impossible. And I want to ask you a little bit more about that, because I have conversations with women founders who have this like 7 figures, this $1 million. If I can gross $1 million, right? That there's this belief that, the stars will align and things like how different life will be. And I want to hear it from you. Like, what was life like when you hit $1 million?
It was like the actual first million, things still felt manageable. After that, the shit started really, sorry about my language, really hitting the fan, if you will. I feel like we grew really organically and nicely until about we went from 200,000 to 600,000 to 900,000 to 1.3, right? That was our first 4 years. Yeah. And in the 900 to 1.3 years, it was all still, I could still manage most of it on my own with help from other people. Yeah. It was the growth period after that where we went to 6 million and then almost 12 million that it was unbelievably difficult and unsustainable, even just for me and the role that I was playing. But also we grew our team from basically 0 full-time people to almost 20 full-time people in 9 months. Wow. And so you think about what that takes to not only bring all those people on, find great people, onboard them, getting them rolling, but you're doing that while client demand is skyrocketing, and you're trying to keep up and just pedal to keep clients coming in and happy. Yeah, and it was happening all in the backdrop of COVID, right? The beginning of COVID was terrible for us, but then we skyrocketed. Yeah. I think partly because businesses were at this place where they're I don't know if I can hire a full-time person, but I have all this work that I need to do. So this fractional concept or part-time contract-based talent was really attractive to them.
Yeah. And people moving online as well.
Yeah, exactly. So being a virtual business, which we have been from the beginning, people, it was definitely an objection at first, but then come COVID, it was not an objection because now everybody's virtual, right? Yeah. And so, I remember hitting $1 million and being just so proud and excited and in shock. Yeah. But it's you couldn't sit there and celebrate it. So busy.
You've got a business to run. I wanted to ask you about that because I've spoken to many women who have grossed $1 million, and my experience is that the vast majority don't even notice. The day that they hit it, that it's sometimes in hindsight, a month or 6 months later, they realize they hit it.
October of that year, and it was my executive coach who was you need to pause and you need to celebrate. Yeah.
You didn't even notice it yourself.
No, it was I don't always look at the numbers every month. So it was sort of here we are.
Yeah. I think that's something really important to highlight because, especially those of us who don't come from a lot of money, if, $1 million sounds like a lot. And the reality I think is really important to showcase that it's not like your whole world changes when you hit $1 million. It's most business owners, you've just shared, don't even really notice until they're looking back and doing the numbers. And the reality is that nothing massive shifts in your business. You're still just running a business.
Yeah. It's just a bigger business, right? There's more people, there's more, and in some ways there's more risk and there's more, you just feel it's not just about you at that point, right? You have team members, you have other people, you want to continue to be successful because all these people are now relying on you for work and for, keeping the business.
Yeah. In the circles that I engage in, both my clients and when we host and peers, and, certainly I surround myself with many folks earning 7 and 8 figures because it's interesting to me to learn about their experiences. I spend a lot of time talking about the differences between, under 100 to 150,000, 150,000 to 500,000, 500,000 to $1 million. Right, talk to us a little bit about your experience growing from 1 million to 10 million. Were there stages that you experienced? Did it all just kind of blend together? What were some of the turning points as your business grew that you can, in hindsight, speak about now and maybe offer some advice to those who are, wanting to or are embarking on that?
Yeah. Well, I think some of the biggest changes and challenges were around growing our team, right? And around knowing what to grow and what to grow how much, right? So there were pain points in our business around our finance team. So as I had said, we had this one friend of mine from a co-working space who was our accountant for 5 years. And then she was doing it as a side gig, right? So she got a job that kept her busier. So I was like, we need to find an outsourced accountant, like someone else, like a real firm. So we engaged a firm. And unfortunately, the person who they matched us with was not doing a great job, and we didn't realize it for a handful of months.
No.
And then it was just such a nightmare to try to fix. There was so much reconciliation that needed to happen. And we were also having the experience of clients not paying us for the first time, and as you get bigger and more clients who are not directly related to your network, that becomes a bigger risk. And you have to have really strong systems and follow up in place to make sure you get paid, right? Yeah. And so, there was a point in time where we thought we had to grow our finance team to 5 people because we had this big external thing. It was a nightmare that we're okay, we're going to move it in-house. We grew the team to 3 people. We thought it might need to be 5 people. And over time, I think we figured out that systems could solve a lot of those problems instead of people. And so I think one of the challenges that sort of demonstrates is as you grow, you have these scrappy, sometimes crappy systems, right? We used to sort all of our consultants in an Excel spreadsheet. But because the chief of staff role is so varied and has so many different things, maybe they need to know finance to build a financial model. Maybe they need to know HR because they're going to hire a bunch of people. Maybe they need to know strategic planning. So we need to keep track of who knows what skills, right? Yeah. And so we had this spreadsheet that tracked all this stuff. But when you're doing a couple matches a month, it's pretty easy to go in there and find people or just sort it. When you're doing 30 matches a month or 50 matches a month, that becomes impossible, right? Yeah. And then you think you need more people when really what you need is a better system. Right. And so in that period of time where we were growing from 1 million to 10 million, I didn't know what systems were not working well enough to know, we need to fix this first. And because systems take a while to roll out, you kind of need the people to make up for the crappy system.
It's balancing so much.
Balancing and the right sizing, right? And so we invested in systems that are still working for us now, CRM systems, applicant tracking systems. We built a custom matching function that's technology first, right? And then people come in and pull the information from the system and then do the things that really only people can do. I would say we had some trouble with the systems and the people piece. I would say one of the other big challenges was the sales role. And it's just, I think a lot of entrepreneurs will tell you it is really hard to find great salespeople. Yeah. We have some phenomenal salespeople, some of whom have been with us for a very long time. But we've also had people cycle in and out of that role because it's hard to find the right people. And I think also as a woman founder, and I know a lot of other women are like this, we believe everyone is coachable and we want them to succeed in their role, and we will bend over backwards to help them be good at their job. And we will take way too long to let people go. And 100% I am guilty of that. And, I think sometimes like your hand has to get forced in some ways, like until you learn that lesson. Yeah. And now I think even though we have figured it out, we still, want to give people all the chances in the world to be successful. But letting go people who are not in the right role for them is part of doing business. And that is really hard for people who are empaths and who care about other people and who like love the human, know that they're not in the right role.
Yeah, that's so hard. We talk often about like finding the right fit for the company and then the right fit for the role. But especially as a business scales, I think what can get confusing is that somebody who was a right fit for the role when the business was, doing 300,000 or 500,000 is not necessarily the right fit for the role when you're doing 2 million or 5 million or 10 million.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I will say, like, I'm proud of the times where we've been able to like shift people into other roles or give people other opportunities. But it's also that you're a really small business. Like there's not always times to do that. And I think it's just hard.
Yeah. So we're talking about, and we talk often on this show about the importance of hiring that, you can do it on your own. You can do it on your own. Right? Yeah. And that's how most folks start. And many business owners get to 100,000, 150,000, sometimes 200,000 without hiring. But there comes a point in the low and certainly by the mid six figures where you've got to hire. Otherwise it's just not sustainable. What I'm hearing from you is that what comes on the heels of that is, especially as you cross the million mark, and I will say, even in the 300 or 500,000 mark, is how important it is to build systems on the heels. So we've got the team, we've got the systems. You said earlier that it was kind of manageable between the 1 and the 3 million mark, but I think you said beyond the 3 million mark, it was chaos. Talk to us a little bit about what you experienced beyond that point.
Yeah, I think the reality is like, you're always going to face different challenges at any level, right? Like people think, you hit 10 million, you're golden, you're just going to say that. Well, we made it up to almost 12 million. And last year we were at 8.5. So, like it's not always upward skyward forever, right? And I think entrepreneurs can get in a trap when things are great and just continuing to grow to think that things are just going to be great and continue to grow because you have the system set up and because you've like figured out ways to bring in new clients or things like that. But like the world is always changing, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's changing, external currents, whether that's like COVID or tariffs or wars or whatever or recessions that are making the world and business leaders make different business decisions, which makes your business shrink or grow, right? But also like technology is changing, the ways that people are using AI, like the fact that you can't just do SEO anymore. You have to think about like how you're coming up in AI searches. And so it's sort of this sort of innovate or die philosophy, right? Like if you're not thinking about how you need to shift in a given moment, your chances of continuing that upward trajectory are lower. So like we have pushed ourselves, like we've gotten really comfortable at what we do well and continuing to do that, right? We've grown in response to client demand, right? We had clients, we just did chiefs of staff for the first 5 years. That was all we did. Then clients kept coming to us asking for different things. And we're like, well, this is really COO work, or this is CFO work, or this is HR business partner work. And we just still had chiefs of staff doing it, charging chief of staff prices. And then we realized, these are actually different things with different like bill rates, different willingness to pay, et cetera. Like we need to differentiate that. And it allowed us to differentiate pay for our consultants as well. So there were benefits and challenges to it, but that was one way that we innovated over time. I think the ways that we're thinking about it now are thinking about AI a lot and how we're using AI, how our clients are using AI, how our consultants need to be savvy in ways to leverage it to save time for the executives that we support. And regardless of your feelings on AI, like my children are constantly scolding me and I try to really only use it for like things that one needs to use it for and not like making memes of myself. The AI train is going, whether you like it or not. And I think figuring out what ways to use it responsibly and effectively in your business is also the type of thing that's going to separate people through the growth trajectory.
I appreciate you saying that, because I'm a firm believer at this point. It's not a matter of opting in or opting out. It's a matter of deciding how we want to be in relationship to it. And I know that's a very hot topic in business. I just want to pull on a couple of threads. One is just reiterating how in the 6 figures and low 7 figures, we talk a lot about team and systems. And I think there's this idea out there sometimes that hitting the million is like, the top of the cliff or the plateau, or maybe a cliff's not a great analogy, but it's like there's just often not a lot of talk about what's beyond. And I think sometimes that can, in that vacuum, we can idealize what it's like. And I think it's just really important to recognize, and I'm appreciating hearing from you that it's just a new level of challenge. And there's actually a lot more opportunity, but also a lot more on your plate to consider, whether it's innovation or demand or sales or all the things. Now, something I've got to ask you about, Maddy, I called you maybe unexpectedly a unicorn at the beginning of this episode, and I see you as such. And the reason being is when you look at the statistics, the vast majority of women-owned businesses are earning under $500,000. I remember a few years back when I was doing some market research for my current company, I was looking up female founders over $1 million in my state, and I couldn't find any. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the heads of, 7 and multi-7 and 8-figure and obviously higher businesses, the overwhelming majority are male. Yeah. And I want to hear from you. What has your experience been like being a woman, owning obviously a woman-led, 8-figure business? What's that like?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I do a decent amount of networking with other business owners, and I'm in some women's business networking groups. And you're right, like the businesses tend to be on the smaller side. They tend to be a lot more solopreneurs or people who are, building things, but maybe they don't even have the aspirations to make it huge, or maybe they just haven't thought that they could. I'm also in spaces with much bigger businesses. I'm a member of EO, and it's Entrepreneurs Organization. You can't even be in it unless you have $1 million in revenue. Yeah. And there's people who have, 50 or 100 million in revenue. People are selling their businesses all the time. Mm-hmm. The conversations are really different, if I'm honest. Mm-hmm. And what I will say about those spaces is they are much more male dominated. Our chapter of EO, I go to the one in Chicago, we have less than 20% women. Wow. What I will say is I adore the women who are there, right? Like I feel so much more like connected with them, I think, than I do with the men, partially just because, we face the same obstacles and challenges. We often are, trying to raise a family while also growing a business. That's not to say the men aren't also, but I think we all know in today's society with gender norms, like how things often look at home. And so I think, I spend a lot of time talking to leaders in general, but also especially women, about how to really stay focused where they can have the most impact, mm-hmm. so that their time isn't all taken up by work, right? Like for me, one of the things that I am most proud about having grown this business is I actually did it on average in less than 20 hours a week, which I think some people think is like mind-boggling, but it's actually not that hard when you set really firm boundaries. Like I would do things like I'm only doing meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays or whatever it is, right? Or I'm going to have this day off completely from any expectations of me so that I can either focus on a work block or take kids to appointments or do whatever I need to do, And our business has a 4-day work week. So for the people on our central team, like I deeply believe that like we as a culture spend too much time working, mm-hmm. and if we are more efficient and focused with our time, you can get your work done in smaller chunks and then have the rest of the time to like do meaningful things with the people who you love. Yeah. And so I think helping leaders stay focused on that sort of zone of genius, right? The areas where they love the work, it energizes them, they're good at it, and the things that like nobody else will do as well as them. Yeah. Those are the places where leaders should spend their time. And then they should think about all that other crap that's taking up their time and how they can get it off their plate, whether that's like automating it through some technological system or handing it off to someone else on their team or bringing on some part-time fractional contract-based talent to do different pieces of it. And just really set up some guardrails and tell yourself that it's okay to not work 40, 60, 80 hours a week.
And not only is it okay, it's more sustainable. It's healthier. You often end up growing a better business. And one of the benefits, I don't work 20 hours a week, but I work less than 40. One of the benefits of having less hours is you get more protective over your time. And for me, I'm certainly less apt to take on some of those things that I really shouldn't be doing, that I should be delegating to other people, because my time is so precious.
It is. It is. And I think as well, you just need to learn to say no. And you have to realize that like every yes to something is a no to something else.
Yes.
And I think we are often like geared to be people pleasers. Oh, my co-CEO now really had to talk me out of being so accommodating about anything. Like model, you have to have a certain number of hours each month. And like people would not use them all and come back and be like, oh, can I have that? And I'd be like, sure. And she was like, Maddy, that stops. We're losing like $80,000 a month from people not using their hours. They are signing up for the ability to use those hours. If they choose not to use them, that is not our fault. Yeah. And that was a really hard mind shift set. Like there's a lot of things in business that like you have to, even like the money stuff, right? Like a lot of times women are talking about the money pieces. And I remember when I started, another woman who was in business was like, we're going to talk money because people don't talk money and you need to charge your worth. And one of my friends was like, you're a Porsche, not a beat up old, like charge for what you're worth. And so I think just like not being afraid to, ask for what you're worth and spend your time in the ways that are most impactful are some of the most important lessons, I think.
Yeah. As I'm sure you're gleaning, and as our listeners know, like I so appreciate the opportunity to talk about all of these conversations. I've said it a few times, with a few other guests, but I feel like we'd have 5 more episodes to dive into. I know, right? But I do have one more question for you before we wrap up. What is next, Maddy? You talked earlier about stepping out or stepping back from this business, because you don't need to be involved all the time. What's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for now, I am going to be continuing to lean in ways that feel like they're in my zone of genius. So I'm spending time going on podcasts, going to conferences, meeting people, brand building, those things like that. I am not involved in the day-to-day running of my business. I have a co-CEO who leads all of that, and that is not going to change ever. I loved it while I did it. And now that I'm separated from it, I'm like, nope, not going back. Because other people can do it just as well, if not better than I am. And because frankly got a little bored of it. So I did it for a long time and I'm ready for something new. And I have lots of fantasies of other businesses I wanted to start. I have a long list of things that I want to do. Some of them are going to wait until my kids are out of the house. So I have 2 sophomores and a senior. And I just really want to treasure the time that I have with them. I also have an elderly mother who I help care for. So right now I'm my zone of genius is these little pieces of vChief and being a caregiver to the people in my life. And in a few years, it might look really different. And I might be starting all over with a new business and, getting out and seeing more of the world. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. I, for one, can't wait to see what you're going to get up to and what you're going to build into next. I will definitely be following you. For anyone listening who either wants to learn more about your story, get in touch, or even take advantage of some of the services that vChiefs offer, which I highly recommend, how do folks find you?
Well, our website is vChiefs.com. And that's the best place to find out about our services. We do chiefs of staff still. We also do COO, CFO, HR business partner. And it's really easy to get on there and find out how much it would cost and things like that. We're really transparent with all of that stuff. In terms of staying in touch with me, I welcome connections on LinkedIn. I'm on there under Maddy Niebauer or Maddy Niebauer. If you search for me, you'll find me.
Thank you.
LinkedIn is probably the best place for me. I think we're on other social places, but that's where I post the most. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, for sharing your story, for sharing your success and challenges with us. I so appreciate it, Maddy. Thank you, listener, for tuning in to FoundHer Rising. If today's episode resonated with you, follow the show, share it with another founder, and leave a quick review. It helps more women find these conversations. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or learn more at HakkolaHorizons.com. Until next time, keep rising and keep building the business that gives you freedom to live, lead, and create on your terms.